The Lincolnshire Coast Light Railway is a 2-foot gauge heritage railway in Skegness, Lincolnshire. Since 2009, it has occupied its present site, skirting 2 sides of Skegness Airfield. On May 24th, 2025, the opportunity was taken to film and photograph the line on the first day of the 65th anniversary of public operation. The first train of the day consisted of simplex diesel locomotive, Major R.A. Robbins R.E. and ex-Ashover Light Railway Gloucester carriage No. 2 of 1925. The pair are seen here in another still, taken in August 2022 in better weather conditions. This map shows the line in its present form, save for the addition of a new station building at South Loop platform. Its main features are a basic right-angle running line with run-around loops at each end, a 5-road stock shed and a terminus complex at Walls Lane, with station buildings, water tower and signalling ground frame. The most significant event in recent years for the LCLR has been the provision of a station building at the far end of the line, South Loop platform. This building began life in 1887 as the Great Northern Railway's coal office on Skegness station. In 1947 it was moved to Ellis Brothers of Lansdowne Road to be the company's offices, a function it performed until 2024. In the third quarter of 2024, the coal office was moved to the LCLR's South Loop platform, where re-erection began. During this process, the ugly extensions to the entrance were discarded, and a corrugated roof, reminiscent of Colonel Stevens' practice, was fitted. It was possible, however, to make the new roof blend in with the original clerestory, which was retained and restored. Along with the station lamp and name board, a most pleasing result has been achieved. All of this work has been made possible with the aid of a grant of £24,250 from the UK Shared Prosperity Fund and match funding of £8,000 from Ellis Brothers. It was not possible at the time of filming for passengers to alight from Cleethorpes Bank Station, but they were able to stand on the newly extended platform. The first passengers of the 2025 season are seen here. When fully restored, the station building will double up as a historical interpretation centre for both the LCLR and Ellis Brothers. The first steam train of the day crosses Old Loop Strait heading from Cleethorpes Bank. As was the case with the Ryan-Camber tramway, the down working is normally cab first. The story of the Lincolnshire Coast Light Railway goes back to 1960, when a group of enthusiasts rented a strip of land from Grimsby Rural District Council to construct a railway in North Sea Lane, Humberston near Cleethorpes. From the local bus station to Beach Station near Humberston Fitties Holiday Camp. The original route is shown in maroon on the map. In order to work the line, locomotives, rolling stock and rails were acquired from the Smiths Crisps potato plantation on Nocton Fen near Bardley. The 2-foot gauge Nocton Estates Railway was 23 miles long, and it connected with the main line network at Nocton and Dunstan Station between Sleaford and Lincoln. The Nocton system had relied on ex-World War I War Department light railway equipment, and the Lincolnshire Coast Light Railway acquired two 20-horsepower simplex diesel locomotives, converted from petrol, two modified ambulance vans, 4 modified P-Class 4-wheel wagons, and 8 D-Class bogie open wagons, along with some rails. The inaugural run, the first of a preservation-era, newly built, non-miniature enthusiast railway in the United Kingdom, took place on August 28, 1960, using simplex locomotive Paul and a D-Class wagon suitably adapted for passenger usage. As can be seen in the photograph, Paul had been fitted with a locally made superstructure appropriately based on marine practice. Many commentators have drawn comparisons between the LCLR and the Colonel Stevens engineered Ryan Camber tramway in Sussex. The corrugated iron stock shed seen here in the early 60s certainly evokes this spirit. This is emphasised in this later view, which also includes the closed carriage from another Colonel Stevens line, the Ashover Railway. Here is a view taken at Beach Station shortly after the introduction of steam working. The use of wagons for open passenger workings was known on both the Rye and Camber and, in post-official passenger days, the Ashover systems. In 1961, the first and only steam locomotive to make a lasting impact on the history of the LCLR to date was acquired. This was built by Beckett & Sons of Bristol as makers number 1008 of 1903 and carries the name Jurassic. Jurassic was the first of 6 similar outside-framed 060 saddle tank locomotives built for Kay & Company's cement works at Southam in Warwickshire. Along with 3 surviving sisters, the locomotive fell out of use in the 1950s, and it was purchased in 1961 by the first Lincolnshire Coast Light Railway and transferred to Humberston, working there until 1985. The locomotive made a farewell appearance at the Leighton Buzzard narrow gauge railway before being put into storage with the rest of the line's equipment at Burler Marsh, later moving to Skegness in 1992. Its ownership was transferred to the Lincolnshire Coast Light Railway's Historic Vehicles Trust in recognition of its significance. After a long period out of service, Jurassic was restored to use in 2017, but it will require a 10-year overhaul in 2027, for which fundraising is currently in progress. The graceful Emmet-like lines of the Southern Beckett design are emphasised by sister locomotive Jurassic, makers number 1632 of 1923, seen here on Statfold's turntable on May the 25th, 2021. Although 20th century products built to a late 19th century specification, many of the Southern locomotive's features, be it the round saddle tank and wing plates, recalling Beckett's predecessor, Fox Walker and Company, or the long wheelbase chassis, date back to the 1870s in their inspiration. The origins of Jurassic's chassis design lie in the patents of John Barraclough Fell, particularly those of 1871 to 1873. Out of these came a type of 6-coupled narrow-gauge locomotive, outside framed and conforming to the Leeds mainstream specification. In order to negotiate Fell's wooden viaducts, however, the wheelbase was elongated to spread the load. In 1873, 3 such 2-foot 6-inch gauge locomotives, numbers 440 to 1 and number 461, were constructed by the Leeds firm of Manning Wardle. The first pair were built for the Bay of Havana Railway in Cuba, and the third one for the Penchuan Railway in Cornwall. One of the first pair is pictured here, and parts of number 441 survive today in Havana. This view shows Manning Wardle 461 Penchuan on Fell's wooden trestle viaduct at Penchuan Harbour during the latter part of the 19th century. Unlike the Bay of Havana railway locomotives, Penchuan was provided with a 4-wheel tender. After just over 2 decades of use, the locomotive was taken out of service around 1896 and scrapped in 1903. Very soon, further long wheelbase locomotives of similar type were being built for railways which did not necessarily use Fell viaducts but did require load spreading. These can be termed quasi-Fell. 2 Manning Wardle examples for India are seen here. The first, number 615 of 1876, was a 2-foot 6-inch gauge tender locomotive, and the second was a 2-foot 2-inch gauge saddle tank. This locomotive was maker's number 766 of 1880. Examples of the quasi-Fell specification were not only built by Manning Wardle, but initially by the other Leeds firms Hudswell Clark and Hunslet. Then makers from further afield, notably Kilmarnock, Bristol and Gorton, got in on the act. This 1885 specimen, again for India, was built by Andrew Barclay. Today, the quasi-Fell specification is represented in the UK by Jurassic and its sisters and 2 Bayer Peacock 060 tanks for the Welshpool and Llanfair Railway. The lead contribution is still represented, however, by a Hudville Clark saddle tank in Australia and a side tank converted to the 240 tank configuration in Mexico. By way of comparison with the early shots of the line at Humberston and recent footage at Skegness, here is a view of Bagnall 240 tank Camber taken 1 year in 1895. From the side view, its proportions are very similar to those of Jurassic. This early days view of the same locomotive at Rye Station on the Rye-Camber tramway shows how similar the early terminus buildings there were to those on the line at Humberston. In this later view at Rye, Camber is seen working cab first with 2 closed carriages in a fashion similar to many of Jurassic's workings today on the LCLR. In this early 20th century view, Camber's later, larger and less fortunate sister is seen at Rye Station. Whereas Victoria was scrapped by 1937, Camber lingered on derelict until 1947. Unlike the Lincolnshire Coast Light Railway, the track gauge of the Rye-Camber tramway was rather greater than was needed for its traffic requirements. In this view, taken in 1933, the modern-day spirit of the Lincolnshire Coast Light Railway is foreshadowed at Camber Sand Station, with a slatted timber waiting shelter and a locomotive incorporating many simplex components. To return to the history of the Lincolnshire Coast Light Railway, it is useful to revisit the map referred to earlier. By 1962, 2 carriages from the Ashover Light Railway had been acquired, and these were returned to working order, followed by a body from the 18-inch gauge Sand Hutton Light Railway, which was fitted to a 2-foot gauge chassis made from 2 War Department Light Railway D-class wagon components. By the late 1960s, the line had been extended along the green route shown. Another steam locomotive, Ellin, Hunslet 705 of 1899, made its appearance on the line, but proved too heavy for the rails, although it remained on site until 1985. It is now on the Richmond Light Railway in Kent, whilst a third steam locomotive, Peter, Bagnall 2067 of 1918, made a brief static appearance before eventually passing to Amberley Steam Museum in Sussex. The Lincolnshire Coast Light Railway soldiered on through the 1970s, but storm clouds gathered during the 1980s, with the miners' strike, cheap foreign holidays, and the final nail in the coffin, the local authorities' insistence on the erection of a 6-foot-high fence either side of the line as a condition of renewal of the lease, forcing the cessation of operations at the end of the 1985 season. Some 2 years before the first closure, several of the line's historic ex-War Department Light Railway vehicles, including an ambulance and representative wagons of the D and P classes, were transferred to the ownership of the Railway's Historic Vehicles Charitable Trust. Following the closure and lifting of the original line after the 1985 season, Jurassic worked out the end of its boiler ticket at the Leighton Buzzard Narrow Gauge Railway's Charity Gala in 1986, before going with the rest of the Lincolnshire Coast Light Railway rolling stock into storage adjacent to Burler Marsh Railway Station. In 1992, a new home was offered at Skegness Water Park, and the new line was opened in 2009. In 2020, the Lincolnshire Coast Light Railway was due to celebrate its Diamond Jubilee, but public events were put on hold until the COVID-19 precautions had been lifted. The public commemoration day was postponed until July the 27th, 2022. By this time, the station facilities at Walls Lane had been greatly improved, with a new office building in the Ashover Railway clapboard style having been added. This was augmented by a new waiting shelter in similar style. It is also seen here facing away from the running line. And in this view, which includes the water tower and semaphore signal at the far end of the platform. Returning to 2025, Jurassic is seen once again, this time on an afternoon train waiting to depart from Wolves Lane Station. And here is the same train returning to Wolves Lane Station from Cleethorpes Bank.